Weyland-Yutani. How much does anybody know about that company aside from the fact they seem to care more about profit and power than they do people? I don't know too much else. But let's unpack it as we discuss Alien and Romulus. You know what time it is. Oh man. So this is one of those movies that if you're a fan of the Alien series in any capacity, you hope that going in, this won't be a waste of your time. Aside from Alien, the franchise, as a movie fan, as a fan of, moving pictures, it can't be a waste of your time because you will invariably find something that you can appreciate. I'm happy to say that both as a fan of Alien and as a film head, this is not a waste of your time. And I'll say off the top, it is worth a look. So just know that. You've likely at this point heard a lot of positive things about this movie, probably some concerning things. And either way, it's still, I think it's worth a watch. So if you haven't seen it yet and you're curious about whether or not I think you should watch it, I think you should watch it, but it's not up to me to tell you what to do. I'm not the person who's supposed to be telling you what to watch. I'm just giving my opinion. If you happen to come across it and you'd like to make your own assessment, I think you should definitely do that. That's what I do. I like to just, even if someone tells me a movie is bad, I'd like to check it out anyway. And I have my concerns about going into this movie. My concerns were mostly soothed, and there were some new things that came up for me during my viewing that I found ended up being issues for me even at this stage. Having said that, I still think it's a solid movie and it's worth a look. Here are some of the pros. Off the top, the production design is immaculate. The look of this movie is just, it's like if you went to a theme park, Universal Studios, for instance, or, somewhere like that, and they had a ride, which I don't know if this was real. Now, maybe one of those theme parks had an alien themed something, but if you went to Universal Studios, for instance, and you saw an alien experience, and it's like one of those, like an escape room or something where you get to go in and experience it and touch things and feel like the atmosphere. I think this movie is a good example from the production side of what that could look like. It's very, very nice. If you look at the first Alien movie, particularly in comparison to this one, they really did a good job. Lead production designer Naman Marshall, who I think worked on The Dark Knight and The Prestige, two excellent Christopher Nolan films, worked on this as well. And you can tell there was a great deal of love and care in the production design. Marshall and his team studied the look of the original Alien and brought that out in this movie. So it feels like it's a seamless connection between those two movies. The cinematography is ridiculous too. Galo Alvarez produces some fantastic shots. Also, the way shots are lit do a great job to make scenes and sequences pop, and how they're captured is just, there's any one of several shots, particularly in the more claustrophobic areas of the ship, or certain parts where even there's some wide shots where things are starkly lit. The way the camera captures that is just artistic beauty. So definitely that is a strong suit of this movie. The cast of young actors in this movie is also very strong. And I think there's something to be said for telling a story in the Alien universe from the perspective of young adults, sort of late teens, early 20s-ish young adults. We've seen many of the movies in this series center around characters who are firmly adult. This is a nice, fresh spin on the story. You get to see how younger people handle the threat and what sort of decisions they make to negotiate what's going on. And it's a nice approach. It's not what you expect. And in terms of what you're getting as an Alien movie, you expect sort of more seasoned people to have a story sort of centered around. That's what we've been seeing up to this point. So it's nice that there's something new in that regard, that we're seeing younger people take their shot and see how they fare against the xenomorphs and facehuggers and things of that nature. Kaylee Spaney, who I last saw in Civil War, she was good in that. I liked her in that movie. She plays Rain, one of our lead characters, and she is a part of a colony of miners on a place called Jackson Star that's sort of in perpetual nighttime all the time. And she is trying to amass enough sort of credits to leave Jackson Star and travel to a different place that's much nicer, another planet, another galaxy. When she finds that the company, Weyland-Yutani, has extended her time on Jackson Star, and she's sort of forced to serve at least another 6 years or so on the colony to continue her work. She's not with that. So she eventually teams up with a group of friends and her close adopted brother, Andy, played by David Johnson, and they leave Jackson Star to find material on an old abandoned sort of space station, with the purpose being that they can sort of escape Jackson Star on their own. Of course, this leads to complications, as you might expect. And, they're going to run into some other life forms and stuff that they have to negotiate before they're going to get to safety. So that's what we're dealing with. And I was talking about the cast. Kaylee Spaney, I think, is solid as one of the main leads. David Johnson also is a standout. He's probably, I think, the character. He plays the character that actually gets a lot of surprises. Probably one of the more surprises outside of the aliens and things that you're going to see. Anyway, the acting gymnastics that is on display that he pulls off, that alone is worth. Even if the movie was terrible, I would recommend seeing the movie for him. He does such a good job, and worth a watch for sure. So David Johnson, excellent. Archie Renault, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name properly, but I remember him from Shadow and Bone, and I thought he was good too. But David Johnson, pay attention to him. He's fantastic. Some of my issues with the movie are as follows. So the biggest thing for me was probably logic. There were certain elements of this movie in terms of character logic that bothered me. Certain decisions that were made didn't seem like logical decisions to make given the circumstances that we find our characters in. And that was troubling because to me, it felt as though those decisions were made or not made for the sake of something having to happen in the movie just because of, plot reasons. And that feels less like I can trust that than if I were to compare something like that to what you see in the original 1979 Alien film. Everyone in that movie made decisions based on the circumstances that they were in that felt logical. That felt like if any one of us were in that position, that based on the jobs they had to do and protocols they had to follow, that those were decisions you would make. Whereas here, I don't feel like that was necessarily the case all the way, which did bother me. So logic was one thing. Character logic was one element. One of the other big things I think that was a problem for me had to do with the ways in which the movie makes callbacks. So, I've mentioned this in a couple of videos previously that I don't have a problem with callbacks per se. It's when there are too many that it feels like the current movie we're watching is leaning too heavily on the previous film. That's when it becomes a problem for me. I would have rather there have been less callbacks to the previous movies in the series, and particularly there's a handful of major ones in the form where major ones in a way that it involves a couple computer generated elements that didn't feel fully realized. Like I couldn't really get behind it just in terms of optics, but also in the context of the story didn't feel correct. I would have been happy if other decisions were made with how they were to include that element of the story. That's just me. That's an issue I had. That though again that makes me it reminds me too much of Alien or Aliens for me to have. I want my current movie that I'm watching to exist on its own, which this movie does for the most part. It does exist on its own as its own thing. But with one too many callbacks, it feels like there's a lot of the older stuff mixed in that makes it feel like it without the original movies, it would be missing something. And I don't like the idea of that. I like the idea of not having to think about the earlier movies when I'm focused on the movie at hand. So that was another issue for me. The other thing is that this movie is set in between Alien and Aliens, timeline wise. What's jarring about that is that this movie looks it still looks a little bit polished in the ways that the earlier movies don't. So I think I would have been happier if the movie was a far future, set in the far future, because then some of the callbacks don't feel as bad, or they don't feel as jarring for me. And then B, there's a mixture of how you have the production design where parts of the ships and things look really grimy and gritty, but what we're watching this story on is a sharper camera, and a lot of the stuff feels kind of new agey a little bit. It's like subtle though. There's like a subtle sheen of we're shooting something old. It's like if you had the original set from the 1979 Alien and you took one of today's cameras and shot that movie right now, or shot something in that movie, you could feel the set looks old, but how we're viewing it looks the edges are sharp, and there's not a lot of grain. There's not a lot of, something that makes it feel a little bit more gritty. That's a little bit jarring. It's subtle. Not very many people are going to be paying attention to that, but that's one of the things that my eye is looking at. Like, oh, I know this is a new movie with these older looking set pieces that they've been lovingly crafted, and I don't know. I wondered if there was a way to shoot this film to make the visuals look a little bit more grainy and less sharp. That's just me. That's the other thing sort of that I found a little bit jarring in this movie. The other thing is, I don't know that there were a few new ideas in this movie, but there weren't enough for me, for my taste. I would have liked more new things, new ideas, but what we got is still serviceable. I think Fedé Alvarez does a great job in how he directs this movie. You can tell he's a fan of the Alien series, and that he manages to make sure that that's in there. It feels like he fits right in there, right in line with what's done, in a nice blend of like original Alien and then also James Cameron's Aliens. There's a nice mix of the two in there, and you get Alien Romulus, which is kind of cool. The way that Alvarez steadily makes the movie not feel like it goes too off the rails in terms of what is established, and it makes it feel like there's a sense of going back to the basics. The other issue with that, though, is that it doesn't totally feel like back to the basics in the sense that in terms of the characters, we know already generally who is probably going to make it out and who's not. That's the one thing that I would have liked in this movie also. Back to the basics, for me, in terms of Alien looks like. If you think of the original Alien and how that movie started, you think Tom Skerritt's character is going to be the hero. The way, at least I thought. The genius of that movie, outside of the atmosphere and the tension and how Ridley Scott made that movie, is that you don't really know who is the lead. You don't really know. Everyone seems to have like equal parts, equal play. And Ripley, she emerges as the lead character just by nature of how things happen. I would have preferred, I think it would have been really cool to have a story where a different alien story with a different group of people where you don't know who the hero is, or you don't know who the lead character is. And just by the series of events, Rain emerges as the hero. And you know, that would have been more thrilling to me, because within the first frames, you pretty much know that Rain is like the new Ripley, sort of spiritually in this other way. She's different than Ripley, but there's like the spiritual, and Ripley in terms of from Aliens onward. If there was a more neutral way to get to who the actual hero of the story is, like in the ways that Alien did, I might have appreciated it more. With a lot of these movies, you know, the first person you see, that person's going to be the key. But it didn't have to go that way. It does some good trickery, but I just think structurally, I appreciate the way Alien did that, and it would have been cool. You don't see that too often in movies today, particularly ones that deal with like horror or suspense or thriller type situations. You pretty much always know who's going to get out of the situation and who's not, even if you don't. So something else that I would have liked for this movie. But that's ultimately what I think about the movie. I did like the movie. I think it's probably one of the strongest recent Alien movies. And I need to see. I think the only one I need to see now is, I haven't seen Alien Covenant. That's probably the only one I haven't seen. There's also some great short films out there too. Alien Isolation is amazing. If you haven't seen that, look for Alien Isolation. That's great. Is Isolation? Isolation is the game. I think. But Isolation is also a great game. Yes, I can't think of the name of the short. There's a great Alien short that I saw. But look out for Alien shorts, because there's some really good ones out there. At the end of the day, those are my thoughts. And if you've stuck around this long, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And let me know what you think about this movie or previous Aliens movies in the series. I obviously love the original Alien, and I loved James Cameron's Aliens. I think those two movies are still the gold standard for Alien movies in the series. Yeah, top tier movies to this day. But let me know what you think. And yeah, come on back for some more videos. Thank you. And I'll see you in the next one. Watch out for the xenomorphs. Take it easy.